Hello, Americans. I'm Paul Harvey. You know what the news is. In a minute, you're going to hear the rest of the story. Now, the rest of the story. It happened every Friday evening, about sunset, on a lonely stretch along the East Florida seacoast. You could see an old man walking, white-haired, bushy-eyebrowed, slightly bent, every Friday. One gnarled hand would be gripping the handle of a pail, a large bucket filled with shrimp. And it was there on a broken pier, reddened by the setting sun, that a weekly ritual would be reenacted. At once the silent twilight sky would become a mass of dancing dots, growing larger. In the distance, screeching calls became louder. They were seagulls, come from nowhere, on the same pilgrimage, to meet an old man. For half an hour or so, this gentleman would stand on the pier, surrounded by fluttering white, till his pail of shrimp was empty. But the gulls would linger for a while. Perhaps one would perch comfortably on the old man's hat. And a certain day gone by would gently come to mind. Eventually, all of the old man's days were past, so if the gulls still today return to that spot, perhaps on a Friday evening at sunset, it is not for food. It is to pay homage to the secret they shared with a gentle stranger. Now, anybody who remembers October of 1942 will remember the day that Captain Eddie Rickenbacker was lost at sea. Somewhere over the South Pacific, the Flying Fortress got lost, got beyond the reach of radio, fuel ran dangerously low, so the men ditched their plane in the ocean. The B-17 stayed afloat just long enough for all aboard to get out, and then slowly the tail of the Flying Fortress swung up and poised for a split second, and the ship went down, leaving 8 men and 3 rafts and the horizon. For nearly a month, Captain Eddie and his companions would fight the water, the weather, and the scorching sun. They spent many sleepless nights recoiling as giant sharks rammed their rafts. The largest raft was 9 by 5, and the biggest shark was 10 feet long. But of all of their enemies at sea, one proved most formidable: starvation. 8 days out, their rations long gone or destroyed by the salt water. It would take a miracle to sustain them, and a miracle occurred. In Captain Eddie's own words, and I'm quoting now, Cherry, that's the B-17 pilot, Captain William Cherry. Cherry read the service that afternoon, and we finished with a prayer for deliverance and a hymn of praise. There was some talk, but it tapered off in the oppressive heat. With my hat pulled down over my eyes to keep out the glare, I tried to doze. Now, this is Captain Rickenbacker talking. Something landed on my head. I knew that it was a seagull. I don't know how I knew, I just knew. And everybody else knew, too. Nobody said a word, but peering out from under my hat brim without moving my head, I could see the expression on their faces. They were staring at that gull. The gull meant food if I could catch it. And the rest, as they say, is history. Captain Eddie caught the gull. Its flesh was eaten. Its intestines were used for bait to catch fish. The survivors were sustained, their hopes renewed, because a lone seagull, uncharacteristically hundreds of miles from land, offered itself as a sacrifice. You know, of course, Captain Eddie made it. By now you know that he never forgot. Because every Friday evening about sunset on a lonely stretch along the East Florida seacoast, you could see the old man walking, white-haired, bushy-eyebrowed, slightly bent, his bucket filled with shrimp, to feed the gulls, to remember that one who on a day long past gave its life without a struggle to save his. And now you know the rest of the story.